So one of the things that we know, starting with documentation is very important in order for any type of assessment or audit that you're preparing for, regardless of the compliance requirements that you may be following or governance that you may be following, such as CMMC, SOC, et cetera. One of the things that I wanted to get into conversation about is discussing why mature documentation actually matters and how it helps whenever it comes to meeting those first steps and getting to that compliance journey. Jackie, as a lead auditor and assessor, do you mind explaining how documentation and readiness with that documentation actually fits as you go into an organization to assess their compliance stance?
Yes, as any part of any assessment, be it internal or external, you have a planning phase. As part of the planning phase, you review documentation to get a good understanding of the entity's control environment. So you want to look at documentation as foundational. And as part of any state and local or federal assessment, it is critical because documentation is basically the how do you know part of your environment. When you do interviews, which is customary in an assessment, you have your SMEs tell us what it is, but your documentation is really the policies that goes along with it. And then it should tell you roles and responsibilities, and it should go through a process decomp of the control of the processes in your place, highlighting the control of the controls in place, highlighting your control points. So that it's very
Yeah,
important. I think we
yeah,
went through
absolutely.
this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know over the course of time, just from some of the practices that we've done here at End-to-End Enterprise Solutions, we've seen both automated and manual documentation that has been put in place by organizations. Whenever you go into an audit, what are some of the nots, like not to do's or best practices that you would suggest a organization do whenever they're actually doing an implementation description?
Implementation description, I think you mean control description. I think some of the biggest things I notice is it's not well developed. Key elements of the control description are not in place that would enable an auditor to write a test case for or to get a comfort
Yeah.
level of how well that control has been implemented.
We actually dealt with some of this back and forth recently as we were making sure Singularity IT is able to assist in automating this, right? Where as a security engineer or ISSO, they take for granted the things that they know and understand about their environment. And inside of those control descriptions, they tend to lack some of the information that you would directly come in and look for. Um, so I think I wouldn't mind actually just talking through that a little bit whenever, if you remember a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at Singularity IT and we were going back and forth on, hey, well, here's where the control description is today. And as a auditor, if I came in and audit, I'm looking for the who's, the what's, the whys, etc.
So the tool itself, if you're working with the entity who their sweet spot is not cybersecurity, it enables them to put in what they have at the immature level and then raise it up to a more mature level by evaluating it against other documentation, if you will, and bring it up to where it clearly outlines roles and responsibilities, uh, the processes involved, and at a very high level, the control points in that process. So it is a tool that allows you to not have to invest in a team of people to do this for you and take maybe 6 to 8 months. You can do this in 4 to 6 weeks for a full CMMC level 2 compliance assessment. And subsequently, if you also need a FedRAMP assessment, it can do the same.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We've actually went through some of those experiences with both FedRAMP as well as CMMC, um, where one of the things that you mentioned was the planning stage, where we're actually collecting all of the job aids and things that may already be existed inside of the environment. One of the powerful one of the powerful things that we've actually implemented inside of Singularity IT is that org knowledge, which is the where you're able to upload all of your job aids, everything that you have put in place around your HR, if there's any other compliance requirements that you may have already been meeting, um, have been meeting in the past, you're able to upload that information, and through what is called RAG, the system actually generates that knowledge base for how to actually get to that level of detail where someone like Jackie would come in and actually um, review and make sure that they're able to see how that control is being met for each one of the requirements.
So when you say met, you have to say, you have to qualify that by saying what your as is process is right now.
Absolutely.
So that's what you're doing now to address that control requirement outlined in CMMC or FedRAMP. So basically, as I said before, what it's saying is you can put something that's very basic, several documents that related to access that are very basic, and the tool will aggregate them and give you a foundational access management policy that meets the requirements for NIST 1.1s. 1.1s in the NIST framework, specifically 853, are always your policy documentation. So you can take something that's very generic, and the tool will give you it'll make you like at least 80% of the way there for a policy. So when you come in, you could say, when you have your assessor come in for whatever kind of assessment that you're doing, you have your policy statement ready for them.
Yeah. Yeah, which which definitely is where a lot of that prompt engineering comes into play as someone preparing just the organization. Even though Singularity is getting me to a certain stance, a certain place, my I would want uh, my implementers to understand some of the power of prompt engineering to help get me that the rest of the way, right?
So for an auditor, you're not going to really be concerned with the prompt engineering. You would want them to just be able to see the final product.
Yeah.
So you would want to understand, as the entity, prompt engineering, you would want to understand that the tool allows you to have no program experience and write a statement in a very conversational manner when you get the first output that steers the tool towards subsequent revisions. That is the selling point of the tool. You can say, okay, maybe the tool returns everything in bullet points, and you say, not quite what I want. Go back and revise for paragraph narratives, and it'll generate complete paragraph statements for you. That is what should be in a paragraph. I mean, should be in a policy. Uh, you know the criteria for a policy statement. You can go in and write the prompt, revise to include uh M360 environments. And I'm just using these as an example to show that you can start with something very minuscule and bring it up to where you need to
Yes.
where it would allow the auditors to get the understanding of what's going on in your control environment? Have you implemented the proper controls to the proper degree of effectiveness to assert that you're meeting CMMC compliance? CMMC is not going to be heavy on tests of effectiveness, so you're really going to have to rely on your documentation to meet that ask.
I know me and you, we could probably can sit here and go all day in ways that we'll want to improve Singularity IT and just the concept of
Yes.
how to leverage AI in this governance process. Just to wrap this up and close it out, what are some of the key takeaways that you think the audience should go away from this with?
As we enter this new age of federal compliance, documentation has always been king, but that's even going to be more so as we move forward. You really want to start with the proper documentation. In consulting, there's a saying, you're going to end up the way you start. And starting with the proper documentation is always the best way to go because it just positions you for a smooth assessment, be it internally or externally.
Awesome, thank you. And then I'll just mention for the audience, like around a lot of what we're talking about with the documentation and how you generate that documentation and how Singularity IT actually supports with that. We'll be hosting demos in order to show some examples of that. And I invite you to reach out, ask any questions around around how Singularity IT can support various compliance requirements, as well as any general questions that you may have. But thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.